off when she passed the baton to me. So now we are now recording. And for those of you who are just joining us on the recording, nothing we said in the first 20 minutes of our time together was terribly important at all. No, I'm kidding. We're just kind of reviewing expireds from yesterday and addressing some ahas, right? Any other ahas from expireds? Yes, Eric.
Yeah, I thought Kate was first, but yeah, if you give me the go, then I'll go. So no, I found it very interesting yesterday. So I second what Margaret said, especially also don't give them too much information. I am a kind of talkative person. I would go on and on. So I need to kind of limit myself, the weight or the waste, right? So that one thing I remembered, why am I still talking? Why am I talking, right? I love that. But then the other thing that I know I can be sometimes a pain in the ass when I'm challenging things, like yesterday when I was a very frustrated seller without my thing expired. That is my agent and everybody's to blame but me, right? So I think I was very grateful for the advice you gave. Like, I understand, you show empathy, and then your catchphrase was, well, you're the one, I'm the last one you're going to talk to because we're going to sell your house.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
So
yeah, that's. I thank you for sharing those. Those are all really good ahas. Kate, what do you have for us?
Mine was just never, I wrote it down, but never underestimate the lack of the desire of your competition. I think in my mind, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, by 8:30, they will be inundated with every person who would call, any agent who would want to call an expired. And so the thought that they're probably actually, I mean, there may be some, but there won't be, it's probably not going to be 550 of us. That was like, it seemed much more approachable to do. I think when I had initially thought about it, I didn't think about it that way. So that was my aha.
Yeah, I love it. And it's if you were on the 9 o'clock call this morning, one of the 20 things that we talked about was, get rid of doubt, right? Starting with self-doubt. And that's kind of what Kate was referencing, that you automatically go to, I might not be fast enough. I might not be good enough. I might not be in the business long enough. I might not. And what I would challenge you with is, what if you are? Right? Just flip that around. I might not know my scripts well enough. Well, you might know them just fine. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was at Century 21, probably my 12 or 18 months or so in the business, the broker at that brokerage hired a coach to come in and coach us. And he did this exercise. There were only 12 of us in the whole company, and so we all just sat in the conference room. And he did something that I will never ever forget. And it's, for those of you who've been around long enough, when we were all still in person, we used to do it at least twice a year just to kind of make the same points. And what he did was he put us in the conference room and he put a phone in the middle, and he opened up, those little real estate book things where there's ads from different brokerages. Well, he would make sure that he opened it up to a company that wasn't up the street, so that we didn't know who was answering the phone, but somebody else in Fairfield County. And he made a live phone call a couple of times to real estate companies as if he were a buyer, and asked for some information and asked some questions. And the whole point was to see, as a buyer from the outside, how he would be treated, how they would handle an incoming lead call. And I was still new enough in the business that I thought to myself, oh man, you know what? This is something I'm not really great at. I'm not all that, I don't have the scripts down. I'm not good at converting. I'm getting my business from open houses and from expireds, which I could affect outbound, right? The being the recipient of calls inbound was something that I wasn't doing a lot of. And so I kind of felt like I didn't have a whole lot going on that respect. Well, after the second call he made, I thought to myself, are you kidding? I'm 1,000 times better than all of those people. And it was such a confidence builder, and I say that not in a disparaging way to the people that he called, but there was a simple fact that every call he made was handled really poorly. It was just not handled well. Nobody ever closed for the business. Nobody ever, most people didn't even ask for a name and a telephone number. They just gave me I was driving the bus, right? Nobody knew nobody had to take control of the conversation and start asking me questions. So the pauses were there. So I just kept asking questions. They kept giving me information. And I finally said, okay, well, that sounds like I have all the information I need. Thank you so much. Have a good, right? And I kind of switched it on you. I moved from the coach making the call to me making the call, because since that time, for the past 16 years, except for this past year when we've not been able to be in the classroom together, at least twice a year, I've run that same exact session. Have any of you been in that session when I've run it? Right. So it's a really cool session because it allows you to hear exactly what works and exactly what doesn't. It's not done to, again, judge or disparage anybody. Far from it. It's done to show you what not to do and what to do. Right? Sometimes the best learning comes from watching. I'm going to stop the recording just for a second. Okay, now I will begin recording again. You know, these get posted publicly to YouTube. So the last thing I need is, is a phone call in the middle of the night saying, I beg your pardon. So one last aha from yesterday, and then we'll move forward. You got nothing, huh? We spent.
When do you do the sessions?
So I will do them again. It's a whole lot harder to do on Zoom, simply because it's harder for you to hear the call, because I need to be on speakerphone. So as soon as we're back in classrooms again, so maybe the summer, I'm hoping that we can get back into classrooms by the summer. We'll start doing those again. All right, guys. So one of the pieces of homework I gave you was to think through some of the objections that we didn't cover yesterday in the expired conversation, or things that kind of frightened you or were bugging you or burning a hole in your brain. What were those that you wanted to bring back and make sure that we had a conversation around to be able to help you push forward and create the success you're looking for? While you're thinking on those, because I'm certain there are some, Margaret, I'll come to you first. Let's just remind ourselves, what is the main focus? What is the one thing that you're pushing for in a call to the owner of an expired property? There's only one thing you're looking for. What's the goal?
The appointment.
To get the appointment, right? To get the appointment. And so I just want you to continually remember that calling expireds is not about listing houses. Calling expireds is about appointment setting. And so when you're focused on what should I be practicing? What should I be studying to get better at expireds? The answer is appointment setting scripts. Appointment set, appointment set, appointment set. How are you getting better at your appointment setting conversations such that you can take them and convert at a really high level? Margaret, go ahead. What's on your mind?
So that's a perfect segue. So what if you call somebody and they're like, oh my God, you know what? I've already had 3 calls. I set up 3 appointments with realtors. I don't think I need to see any more, but thanks.
Got it. Perfect. And so if in your scripts, I'm just trying to give you a direction. In your scripts that I sent you last Thursday, and if anybody needs these, if this is your first time on with us or you didn't get them, just do me a favor, pop your name in the chat box, and maybe somebody would be kind. Pop your name and your email address in the chat box, and someone can shoot them over to you. You know, minimally, I know this is Ashley's first time on the call, I think. Yeah, there we go. So if somebody would do me a favor, and whoever's sending it, just pop it in the chat so that Ashley doesn't get 75 different emails with all the scripts. Whoever's going to take care of that, just let us know. That'd be great. And if you turn to the page 3 in those scripts, the Ron Wexler script says something to the effect of, kind of midway through, it sets up the scenario that there's another appointment. I've set other appointments. So the first thing that Ron asks then is, I understand that. I'm curious. The first thing I'll say, Margaret, is in all the years that I called expireds, no one ever said that to me. Not a one. Again, because we remember that we're coming at this from the perspective of, I'm sure everybody's out there calling expireds, and so I'm just going to add to that big long list. And the reality is that's simply not true. Right? Simply not true. I'm going to push you guys in another probably 15 minutes or so into breakout rooms, just to kind of practice with your scripts the first 5 or so lines, so that we hear the motivation scripts from our own mouths. And I guarantee you, some of you will do that in this breakout room, and you'll never say those words again, right? It'll be the one and only time you utilize that script, because you'll decide not to push forward with expireds, and that's completely fine. So having said that, if you go through Ron's conversation, he asks, what time is your first appointment? Well, it's at 7. Great. So here's what I'd like to do. Set an appointment with me tonight at 8. This way, after you've met that, when's your last appointment, right? So you got 2 ways to go about this. I'll give you Ron's way, and then I'll give you my thought. Ron's way is see those other 3, and then set an appointment with me to make sure, I have to read his script, sorry. Let's set an appointment to meet with me tonight at 8 after the other agents. This way, after you've met with them, we can see what they had to say, compare notes, and see if it would make sense for you to list with me instead. So I'm not a huge fan of let me be last.
I think he switches it up.
Well, he does switch it up later on in his script, simply because he switches himself into an investor. Right? He puts on the hat of investor. If you read through that script, he continues to go down and say, you know what, let me save you some time. And that's where I would go kind of immediately. Right? So if I called Margaret and Margaret said, I've already set 3 appointments, which again, hold on a second, we have a live mic and I can't find who it is. Okay, there we go. So I've already set an appointment or 2, or I've set 3 appointments. Got it. I'm curious if I could save you time and potentially thousands of dollars. Would it make sense for us to meet first, so that you did not have to put yourself through the angst and pain of sitting through presentation after presentation after presentation? Well, but isn't that what you're going to do? No. One of the things that makes me different is that you and I are going to have a relatively brief consultation to figure out exactly what your needs are and how I can meet or exceed those needs. And if you're not convinced in the first 30 minutes, we can part as friends, and I will wish you luck. However, if you are convinced in those first 30 minutes, I will personally call the other 3 real estate agents and cancel those appointments on your behalf.
That's awesome.
So that's where I would go with that. By the way, one of my favorite activities as a listing agent was listing a house and then calling the other agents to cancel. Because one of the things that I found and I don't mean that in a kind of a mean way or a ha nanny boo boo kind of way. What I mean by that is what I found over time was when people said, I'm not sure, or I want to think about it, When you choose not to accept that answer and you dig a little deeper, great. I'm curious what's holding you back from making a decision to list with me tonight. And sometimes they'll say, well, because we have appointments scheduled with other agents. Or sometimes they won't. And so if they don't say that, I'll put it on the table. You know, one of the things I find, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that sometimes, now again, we're switching from appointment setting to in the house. So I'm sorry that we're jumping around a little bit. But the idea would be, oftentimes when I meet with sellers just like you, they're hesitant to sign the contract because they feel as though they owe their time to the other folks that they made appointments with. I'm curious, had you not had those other appointments scheduled, would you and I be taking the next step of listing your house tonight? Well, yes. Great. So let me start going to work for you right now. Allow me to make your life simpler as you're signing the paperwork. Just tell me the names of who you had appointments with. I'm certain they're in my phone. I work with them all the time. And I am certain that now that you've made a decision to list with me, that they would appreciate having the night off and not having to leave their families, knowing that they would only be coming to speak with you and still not take the listing. Right? So you kind of flip that around to have the conversation that says, I'm just going to start offering you my services right this very minute. I'm going to model for you exactly what me taking care of my clients looks like. And if you're uncomfortable making the phone call to cancel those appointments, I'll just do it for you. I spent a lot of time, because back when I was still listing most of my properties, certainly as a solo agent, we weren't having people come to the office for the actual consult. We were going to their houses, right? We were sitting at dining room tables. As we'll start to talk tomorrow, that is not what we're recommending anymore today, except for perhaps the Zoom version due to our current environment, right? But the idea, I spent a lot of time on the front porch calling other agents while the clients were starting the paperwork. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And the call is simple. Hey, Donna, it's Rick Scott. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. I'm over here with the Coopers at 123 Main Street, and they have gone ahead and decided to list their home with me this evening. So that appointment they had with you for later tonight or tomorrow morning is going to be unnecessary. They wanted me to just extend their thanks to you and wish you the absolute best. Have a good night. Right? Short and sweet. Here's one thing I did not say, because it used to drive me nuts when it got said to me. The good news is you still have an opportunity to bring the buyer. Oh, shut up. Just shut up, please. Right? Cool beans. All right, Morgan, did that help? Good. What else? I know there were a couple of other people who unmuted. What other issues or concerns did you have with expireds that you wanted to make sure that we objection handle a little bit tonight?
What makes you think you can do a better job this time than the previous agent did?
So great question. So are you asking me that from a mindset perspective, or are you putting that out there as an actual objection?
I am still looking for the value proposition, so I'm trying to see how you guys package it here.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to answer that two different ways, right? Because I heard the question two different ways. I'm going to answer that as a real estate coach speaking to real estate agents, and then I'll answer it as a real estate agent objection handling to get the appointment on the phone, right? So the real estate coach in me hears that question from the perspective of, are you confident in your abilities to get the job done such that you can say things like, I have an expertise in getting homes sold the second time around, it didn't sell the first time around, right? You need to know that you can back that up, is what I'm hearing Elena say. And so my my answer to you on that is there's only one reason a house doesn't sell. What is that reason?
Price?
Right.
You got it, right? I can make you a big long list of all the reasons that houses don't sell. Number one is price. Number two, price. Number three, price. 4 through 77, yes, you got it. Price, right? There's only one reason a house doesn't sell. So I know that what I excel at is reading and helping clients interpret the market such that they can make better decisions, because I'm not afraid to tell people the truth. I'm not afraid to show them the market cycles, the market trends, the market conditions, such that they're making better decisions than perhaps they did the first time around. So I'm mostly confident that I can get the job done the second time around, because there's only one thing that we have to address. It wasn't a marketing issue. It wasn't the fact that the house was on a busy street, right? It wasn't the fact that the agent didn't tell enough agents, right? All of those things are kind of distractions from what the real issue was. So I know if I go in and focus simply on that issue, that we will have success the second time around. And so from a mindset perspective, that's why I am confident in saying things like, we can get the job done where somebody else could not. Now, from an objection handling perspective, if Elena said that to me, if I was attempting to, if I said to Elena, I have time at 5 o'clock today or 6 o'clock today to stop by and just have a quick 30-minute consult about the sale of your home, which works better for you. And she said, well, I'm not sure I really want to see you. What makes you so sure that you can get the job done this time? Or what will you do differently versus my last agent, right? That's usually how that comes out. What will you do differently versus my last agent? Now my answer to that is this. That is a great question, Elena. Thank you so much for asking it. It's the reason, frankly, we need to meet, because the answer to that question takes a bit longer than we currently have time for on the phone, and includes a bunch of great visuals, which will give you all the information you need. So did you say 5 or 6 worked better for you? And I'm going right back to closing for the appointment. The art of not answering the question, right? Because so many of you want to know what the answer to the question is. And I'm here to offer you that for an appointment setting conversation, you don't need answers. What you need are closes. Diana Kokoska teaches us that we need to close at least 5 and as many as 10 different times to get the appointment, right? Do you have courage enough to close that many times? Because sometimes it takes courage. And sometimes it just takes confidence and practice. And sometimes it takes all 3 of them, depending on who's on the other side of the phone, right? So Dana asks, what if they're rushing you off the phone? Remember I said yesterday, it is my opinion that you call out whatever is happening humanly on the telephone. And so if I'm not sure what that looks like, but if I'm asking, right, see, if they're rushing you off the phone, I'm actually thrilled with that, because I don't want to have a big lengthy conversation, right? I told you yesterday, and I wasn't kidding, 4 or 5 different questions that we went through yesterday in your scripts, and then a close, and I'm done on the phone. This should not be a big lengthy conversation. So if they're rushing you off the phone, I might use that to my advantage. My goodness, Ms. Jensen, it sounds like you're in a crazy rush, and I am so sorry if I bothered you today or called at an inconvenient time. So let me just ask real quickly, does 5 or 6 o'clock work best for me to stop by? I'm just going to go right to the close again. Here's what I won't do. It sounds like I caught you at a bad time. When can I call you back? I'm not doing that. It's certainly not right up front, right? I may get to a point where I've objection handled enough and just decide that this person isn't giving me an appointment. Because guys, here's what's real. You won't get an appointment every single time. Even if you're brilliant, you don't get an appointment every single time. It just doesn't work that way, right? Does that help, Dana? Cool. What else? Anything else on expires that you want to make sure that we cover? Alex, go ahead.
I'm curious, what is the most, or can you tell a story about a very intimidating expired experience that you had?
That's a really good question.
Like I think if we name it, and I think that's, for me, that's helpful.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure intimidated is the right word, but I'll give you this story and see if it answers your question. Certainly, when I first started calling expireds, I was far more nervous than I would be today, right? Simply because I felt like I wasn't quite as confident as I am today. And so that's A, right? And how do you get confidence? You keep doing it over and over and over again. You just keep practicing, right? And you build the confidence. The other way that I built my own confidence was to be certain that I pushed myself to do it, even if I didn't wanna. And when I started to get appointments and then take listings and make money by doing the things that I wasn't really interested in doing, it just drove me right back to say, okay, well, I have to do that again and keep doing it, right? Because I saw the success from it. So what was the story I was going to tell? I thought of one and then I lost it because I went down a different path. And so early on in my expired calling days, somebody said to me, I'm curious, have you seen my house? And I said, no. And they went into this whole big tirade about, why on earth would I ever hire you to represent me if you didn't even bother to come and look at my house the first time? Did you bring buyers? No. Well, right. This whole big to-do about the fact that I hadn't seen his house. And I wasn't prepared for that. So I stumbled my way forward. I think we ended the call, whatever. I did not take that listing. I didn't even get an appointment, but it challenged me to go back and sit. And for me, it's about, okay, I'm going to sit and write my own answers first. This is the way I do it. I write my own answers first, and then I take it to the streets, right? So I want to know how I should be prepared next time, and then I'll go and I'll ask colleagues, or I'll Google, scripts, or do whatever I'm going to do. But I want my own answers first, because what I've learned over time is that when I sit down and write my own answers, I can use what I gather later on to make my answers better. But my answer was organic. My answer was what made the most sense to me. And so perfecting something that came from me, I personally have experienced over time that I'm far more apt to actually say that than maybe something that I just got from somebody else. And here was my solution to it. And then I'll go to Eric. I see you raising your hand. My solution was, because that it wasn't, the good news is that wasn't the first time, that wasn't the last time that ever got asked of me, right? So the work I did paid off. And the next time somebody said, have you seen my house? I said, tell me why you ask. I didn't say yes or no. I said, tell me why you ask. And they said, well, we're just concerned that we want to make sure that we hire someone who's actually been to the house. And I said, may I explain why that's one of my biggest concerns and why I'm so glad I called today? And they said, yes. I said, well, the reason it's one of my biggest concerns is because I am a full-time real estate agent. I do this for a living every single day from morning until night. And the whole time that your house was on the market, it did not hit my radar. And so you asked earlier what I might do differently than the agent that you hired previously. One of my answers is I make certain that my colleagues know that my properties are on the market. And frankly, the relationships that I have built, my colleagues make certain that they know what properties I have on the market. Exposure is everything. And so I'm curious, in order to create more exposure, to get more eyes on your property, is it worth 30 minutes of your time to sit and have a further conversation with me? I got that appointment and took that listing, right? So it was just a matter of being prepared, because the reality is whether I was in the house or not, that was not a relevant question. And so I just turned it into a conversation around exposure with a solution. Does that help, Alex? Excellent. Anna asks, what if an expired asks about realtor commission? Excellent. I will, and Eric, I'm sorry I skipped you. I'll go back to you in just a second. So asking about commissions or term of listing or how many houses have you sold in Brookfield, all that stuff on the telephone, you just deflect that away. And how that looks is if Donna says to me, so I'm curious, before I say yes to an appointment, what is your commission? Well, great question, Donna. All of that will be discussed in whole, in totality, when we meet. Well, can't you just give me a small hint? I find that doesn't typically do you any good. Let's do this. Let's get together and have a conversation, because frankly, price in the absence of value is just a number. And so I'd rather have a conversation around value for the price that I charge. Does that make sense? Great. And so did you say 5 or 6 o'clock was better for us to meet? By the way, guys, I don't know if you've noticed that script that I've used a whole bunch of times tonight. Nobody ever said 5 or 6 o'clock, but the script is, I am so sorry, which one did you choose, 5 or 6 o'clock? I don't recall what you said, right? It's just repeating the same script so that you get an answer this time, right? Does that help, Anna? Okay, excellent. Eric.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So first of all, I don't think Rick Scott is easily intimidated after all these years, right? But actually, what I did like is when you said, why did you look at my house? In my opinion, and please correct me, you're the expert. When we pull a list of expired houses from the MLS, I don't think there's tens or hundreds of houses out there. Okay, so when you pull that list, I think it's very good practice for myself to look at each individual, because there may be 5 or 10 that at a certain moment, and then it doesn't take you hours to look at each of these houses to have kind of at least an impression of what we're talking about when you call that owner. I don't know. For me, that would be one of the things I would do when I pull that report. And the first task was for me to inform myself, prepare me on my phone calls.
Yeah, and so I can tell you I've done this both ways, and I'll address your first comment first. I'm not intimidated by really anything, and it's not, that's not a statement that says, oh, good for me. It's a statement about coming from a place of contribution. I'm not intimidated by anything anyone can ask me, because I'm only on the telephone to assist. I'm only there to help, right? I'm only there to offer my services and make sure that this person who in an expired scenario spent the last 6 months only to fail. And so I want nothing more than to turn that around and create success for them. So there's little that anyone could say or do that intimidates me anymore, because I understand my purpose. I understand exactly why I'm in business and why I'm making this phone call. If I were making the phone call and it was all about me earning a commission, that's a different place to call from. When you make it about others and it's all about others, and I know that may sound kind of like airy-fairy to some of you, but I will tell you that I believe that with every ounce of my being, and it has changed the way I look at any of these business conversations. They're far more objective for me today. There's nothing really subjective about them. I'm calling to assist. If you're angry on the phone with me, I'll just call it out. My goodness, you sound so angry. I am so sorry that this experience was so bad. I'm so glad I called to help. If they sound upset or dejected, I might just call that out. My goodness, if you don't mind me saying so, you sound so down. My goodness, I feel like I should tell you a quick joke before we continue, right? And maybe I would tell a quick joke. Knock, knock, who's there? Right? Orange who? Orange, glad I called today. Ah, And I'm really kind of not kidding when I say, if I called Donna and she sounded all down in the dumps, the human in me wants to pick her up. And here's what's fabulous about that when you look at that from a business perspective. The fact now that I engaged Donna at a human level and made her laugh, she's now not going to hang up the phone on me. She's going to give me a moment to talk to her. And then when I pivot the conversation from, are you still interested in getting your home sold, to, I'm curious, had you sold your home, where were you headed? What was taking you there? When did you need to be there? Now the conversation's all about her. I've cheered her up. I've made her smile. I focused the entire conversation on about her and her needs. When I ask her for 30 minutes later in the afternoon, it's a no-brainer. Right? The only reason she's going to say no is if she already had something else to do at that time, and then we may have to just figure out a different time to grab a Zoom, right? I'm going to be out from 3 o'clock on. Got it. Quick question for you. Knowing that you are interested in getting to Houston as quickly as possible, and knowing that your home is now not on the market, does it make sense for us to have a quick 30-minute Zoom session before you depart for 3 o'clock? I can make some time around 12 or 12:30 work. I have something I can move. That's a great script, by the way. Because what it says is, you are far more important to me than something else I have scheduled. I am willing to arrange my schedule to make sure that I am helping you at the highest level. I hope the things that I'm saying to you sound sincere, because they are sincere. I'm not making it up when I say to you that coming from a place of contribution, and always coming from a place of contribution, gives you the power to have any conversation. It really is an empowerment that I hope you give yourself the gift of.
Hey, Rick.
Donald and then Donna, and then I'm going to circle back because Ralph had his hand up. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say I support you 100%. You know, coming from a sales background, I think it's not really about what you say, it's about how you say it, because, you know, your tonality has a lot to do with how people would perceive what you're saying. So
Yeah.
100%.
100%. 100%. Right? How you say it is as important as what you say. P.S. Donald's my new favorite. So y'all are going to have to work a little harder, because flattery, as I said to you, will get you absolutely everywhere. And so go ahead, Donna.
And I just wanted to underscore what you just said is so important, in the mindset that you're arriving there to help someone with a situation that actually didn't work out well for them. That's the only reason why you're calling. And if they happen to be mad, upset, angry, nasty, any of the things that you're afraid of, It's not about you. It's about somebody else who didn't do their job. It is not personal. And sometimes just to stand there and take one for the whole real estate community and not run away, not deflect, not say, oh, well, you know, I'm sure all that they've been living through. You just stand there and I think Rick said, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that that happened. You know, I'm so glad I called. That place of coming from contribution, it's critical. And here's the thing, we're talking about value proposition and point of difference. You sound different. If anyone has called them, you sound so different. I mean, it's just massively important to switch that mindset and know that you are there to help them. You're the only one who can help them.
Yeah, so 1000% true. And here's what I'll challenge you to do. If you don't believe me or Don or Donna, if you don't believe the people that are saying these things kind of to confirm what we've been talking about, just try it. Try it both ways, right? Because I guarantee you, when you come from a place of contribution, you'll actually make the call. When you come from a place that's anything other than contribution, fear oftentimes overtakes you and you don't make the call. When you come from contribution, there's an innate level of confidence there, even if you don't know the scripts, even if you don't know what to say, because you do know how to have a human conversation. And if you can work those 3 motivation questions into a human conversation, you're good to go. Ralph, what do you got?
Yeah, my thing is, what if you're like myself, I'm a new agent, I don't have a track record, I don't have anything behind me. How do you break the ice and really get moving on, say with an expired or whatnot?
So great question. And I would say to you that it is as simple as changing the pronoun. And what I mean by that is, instead of I, in terms of your accomplishments, your experience level, your skill level, whatever you're referencing, just change it to my team and I. Because now you have the power of 550 other real estate agents behind you. And you can honestly push forward. What I love about my team and I is that I get to send the exact same message as experienced agents get to send about themselves without having to have the experience behind me, because it's just broadened to my team and I. And what's spectacular about my team and I is that most people you talk to don't have any idea of what the difference is between I did this or my team and I did this, right? And so I would just utilize that power. Now, if you're ever called out on it, right? Every once in a while, somebody might say, well, you know, how many homes have you sold? Great question. Would it surprise you to know that you'd be my first? It's part of the reason I am so excited to be able to meet with you and showcase for you the results that I can create. Because frankly, my team and I have sold more houses than almost any other brokerage in Fairfield County in the last 12 months. And I am so excited to be able to bring that level of expertise to you. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Right? Everybody had a first time. Everybody did it the first time by themselves. Now, just to be transparent, for me, that was an admission that I only made if I absolutely was backed into a corner to answer that question. It wasn't something I trotted down the street saying, hey, new agent here. Anyone want to try me? Hey, hello, right? Be my guinea pig, please. No experience here. Please hire me. That was not the point. However, when put into a scenario of if someone says to you, well, how many homes have you actually sold? Which I will tell you, as a new agent who never really waved the arms of new agent, That got asked of me all of 0 times. 0 times. A big part of why that got asked of me 0 times is because one of the things I practiced was passion and confidence. And when you come in confidently with a passion around helping somebody, they don't ask you those questions. Right? Donna said yesterday, you have to just show up and be the one. Well, part of being the one is showing up confidently and with a whole lot of passion to get the job done. If you're meek or don't really feel all that excited because you're nervous, and you choose to express nervousness through fear, sellers, like dogs, can smell it. They know it, right? And that's what prompts them to ask those questions. Here's what I would encourage you to do. My first love a long time ago was the theater. And one of the things that a director said to me one day, we had a very limited rehearsal time. And I had the lead in this show that was a lengthy 1-act play where it was probably a 50 or 55 minute 1-act play. And I was on the stage for all but about 1.5 minutes of it. And in that 1.5 minutes that I was off the stage, I had a fast costume change. And for most of the 55 minutes that I was on the stage, I was talking. Because this 1-act play was basically one long monologue, right? It was a Christopher Durang play called The Actor's Nightmare, if any of you know it, right? And it's a play about this guy wakes up and it finds himself suddenly in the middle of a play and he doesn't remember being an actor, he doesn't remember any of his lines, and people kind of come and go as if he's doing these scenes from famous plays. It's actually a great comedy, and yet, I said to the director, he said, well, how do you feel? And I said, I'm like crazy nervous, right? Crazy nervous. And he said, here's what I want you to remember. The energy around being nervous shows up one of 2 ways. You can take nervous and turn it into fear, and your body will follow you. Or you can take nervous and turn it into excitement, and your body will follow you that way. And so every time that being nervous is a human condition. Like, we all get nervous around something. I've just learned over time to turn that nervousness into excitement and then channel excitement. If I'm sitting talking to somebody, I'll just be excited. I'll be a little bit more animated than maybe I would have been. I'll talk a little faster if that's possible, right? So those kinds of things. Somebody else once told me that butterflies in your stomach, that nervousness you feel, if you don't feel it, be afraid. Because when you don't feel those butterflies, when you're not a little bit anxious or nervous about something, you've entered into complacency. And you're not listening, you're not on the ball. And if you're an actor on the stage and you're not listening to what goes on around you, you got big problems, right? Big problems. I'll give you an example of that tomorrow. Does that help? Just channel nervousness into positive excitement, and then just go be more excited than that. Like when they have you in their house or when you're on the phone, just be so crazy excited that they get off the phone and be like, oh my God, this guy named Ralph called, and I don't think he's ever sold a house, but I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone who was more excited to sell a house than this guy. You'll get hired. Does that help? Okay. All right, I'm going to take one more, and I think it's Anna asking, what would you say if someone says, "Oh, we decided to do some improvements in our house now, and so we're not ready to go back on the market"? So that's a great objection great objection. And so where I would take that is, again, just ask another question. Got it. I'm curious, what improvements were you thinking of doing? First, that question will cull out whether or not that was just a way to deflect the conversation, right? Because sometimes sellers just say, "Oh, I'm gonna do some improvements," to kind of get you off the phone. So then just follow up. What improvements were you thinking of doing? Oh, we're thinking of doing the kitchen. Got it. Hey, I'm curious. Would it be helpful if you and I had a conversation around the difference between price and value in terms of improvements in your home before you spent a dime on the property? Would it be helpful if we just talked through what that would look like for you from a resale perspective? Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. Great. I have some time later at 5 or at 5:30, which works best for you. I'm still closing for the appointment. I'm going to make a small adjustment as to why we're closing for the appointment. Now the appointment is about, let's meet and have a conversation about what you're about to spend on your house. Because guys, I have a very firm belief that you sell what you own. Going and spending more money to try and get more money is oftentimes foolish, right? Let's just sell what you have. Part of that conversation says, okay, so you're going to redo the kitchen. I'm curious, how much do you expect to spend on the kitchen? What are your plans for the kitchen? What choices have you made for the kitchen? Would it surprise you to know that sometimes we struggle selling homes with newer kitchens than we do with older kitchens? May I explain? You see, sometimes when people update their kitchen and spend $50,000, it limits their buyer pool because the choices they made, even though it's brand new, aren't what a buyer was really looking for. And we find that sometimes there are more buyers out there who are willing to spend a little less and then make the kitchen their own. Does it make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, to price your property for what it is you have to sell, save that $50,000, and put a new kitchen in what you buy next for you? Just modeling how some of those conversations might happen, right? If you got the appointment. But from an appointment setting conversation, Anna, I think that was Anna, right? Yes. Does that help? Let's just use it. We want to do improvements. Great. What are you thinking? Would it be helpful if I consulted you about what that looks like for you as a resale tool? Great. Let's have an appointment. I'm going to tell you guys, whatever comes out at me, I'm going to answer the question from a place of service to say that, by the way, I'm almost always agreeing, right? When they say, oh, we're going to do some improvements in the house, I don't say, oh, you're kidding. Why are you going to do that? Because now I'm making them wrong. And the way you don't get the appointment is to make somebody wrong. So instead, you want to always agree. You want to make them right. Oh, that sounds awesome. What improvements were you looking at? Well, we thought we would redo all the bathrooms. Excellent, excellent. I see from my notes here you have 3 full baths. Yes. Wow, that's a lot of construction. Hey, would it be helpful before you spend a dime and you go and ask that question? Make sense? Does that help, Anna? Okay, good. Okay, so Neil's asked, how do you deal with hangups or when they say I hired another agent? So I'll address each of those separately. Hangups, to me, I called back. When I was doing this, when someone said click, I would just call back. So if I called Margaret and said, yes, hi, is this Margaret? Yes, hi, this is Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. I couldn't help but notice. So I would just call back. Hello. Hi, Margaret, I am so sorry. I apologize. My phone must have cut out on us. And I was just simply about to ask whether or not you were still interested in selling your home now that we've seen it come off the market. Minimally, you'll at least get an answer to that one question. And then what we know from the literally hours that we have now spent on this conversation, what we know is we move right to, hey, Margaret, before I let you go. Or, hey, Margaret, before my phone drops, before my phone cuts out again, Let me ask you a quick question. I'm curious, had you sold your home, where were you headed? What was taking you there? And we go right into and now we're having a conversation, we're off and running. I know there are some of you who roll your eyes at that concept of pick up the phone and dial it again. But I can tell you, I have learned from experience that if people hang up on you once, rarely are they brave enough to hang up on you a second time. And if they do hang up on you twice, then my thought is move on, right? They've now made it clear that they're not interested in talking to you, right? The first time, I just want to make sure it wasn't just emotion. If they hang up a second time, I got the message. Thanks, moving forward, right? So that's how I personally deal with hangups. And when they say they've hired another agent, right? So then I might ask a couple of questions. Got it. I'm curious, who is it that you hired? Oh, we hired Marty Smith at Coldwell Banker. Oh, that's awesome. I know Marty really well. Hey, I'm curious, have you signed the contract with Marty or have you just spoken to him? Well, we've just spoken to him. We're meeting with him tomorrow. Got it. Hey, I'm curious, would it make sense, seeing as I have a specialty in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around, would it make sense for you and I to have a quick conversation later today, just in case it makes sense for you to hire me instead? I'm still going to close for the appointment. See what they say. Well, we already promised Marty. Got it. Got it. Hey, let me ask this. If we met for 30 minutes later on and you decided to go ahead and hire me instead, would it be helpful if I communicated your choice to Marty so that you wouldn't have to make that call? Oh, well, maybe. Guys, most people aren't really loyal to Marty. They just don't want to have to make the phone call. So if you take that off of the table, all of a sudden you open the opportunity for them to say yes to you, because them saying no to Marty, you just took off their plate. Does that make sense?
Yep, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, guys. So maybe you can tell that I love me those expireds. And I hope that the time that we spent, because we kind of overspent time on expireds, and yet I hope that the time that we spent was useful and helpful to you, regardless of whether you ever dial an expired or not, because so much of what we've been talking about, over and above the fact that the foundation of this conversation was calling expireds. Really what we've been talking about universally is, how do you close? How do you appointment set? How do you convert leads that you've generated to actually get an appointment? Because the skills are all the same. The scripts might be slightly different when it's not an expired, and yet the skills are all the same. So this back and forth and the objection handling that we've done hopefully has modeled for you exactly how you go ahead and close for an appointment, regardless of whether it's an expired or not. Have we accomplished that at least some level? Okay, excellent. I'm going to take Alex's heart as the answer to the yes, and Anna's big smile. Okay, perfect. Yes, Barbara.
I have one question that I got twice last year when I was calling expireds, and actually comments. What they said to me was, hey, my agent already told me I'd be getting calls night and day, and he told me to just hang up the phone. It was always the same agent, it was always the same company, but it was always expired, and there was that window, and I couldn't overcome it. Even though what I wanted to say, I wanted to say some things with regard to, well, how has it worked for you so far? Something along those lines. But what happened was, he's a really big guy in town, so I just felt intimidated by saying anything about somebody like that when I was so new. And
sure. Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Barbara, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, so I think that see, to me, it it matters little who the other agent was, right? I'm going to tell you what, one of the things I learned to do was not even look. Somebody said yesterday, make sure you study the listing before you have a conversation. I'm going to tell you, I don't do that. I just stopped doing it because my goal wasn't to have a conversation around the house. My goal wasn't to have a conversation about the other agent. My goal was to just set an appointment, right? And I found that the more data that I shoved into my brain about the house I was calling on, it made it too specific about the house. And I was more apt to start having conversations around the house because I knew some information. So if someone said that, to put what Barbara put on the table, let's just objection handle that real quick, right? So hey, it's Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. Just wanted to check in with you. I saw your home come off the market and I was curious if you were interested in getting your home sold or not. Still interested in getting your home sold. You know, my last agent told me that everyone would be calling and told me just to hang up the phone. Wow, that's an interesting strategy. Before I let you do that, however, I'm curious, had you sold your home, where were you headed? Guys, I know you think I'm making it up, but I just go right to the same script. I would address it and say something like, I mean, I do think it's kind of an interesting strategy, so I might just say that. Well, that's kind of an interesting strategy. Before I let you hang up on me, though, let me just ask you a quick question. Again, they put it out there. They don't expect you to agree with them. They expect you to put up a fight. And so I find that when you're agreeable, people are agreeable back. Maybe what the script is maybe you chuckle. Oh my goodness, that's a really good one. I'm going to tell you what, I haven't heard that before. And I make these calls pretty much every single day. Hey, so thank you for making me laugh this morning. Hey, before I let you go, however, I have just a quick question. Had you sold your home, where were you heading? And I'm gathering that information. I might not get the appointment. Maybe they're just taking it off the market for 2 weeks and are putting it back on with the same agent. Well, that's okay. I'm still going to go through the motions and have the conversation so I can move to the close and then see where I have to go. There's almost nothing that can be done or said at the beginning of these calls, as far as I'm concerned, that derails me from acknowledging it, being positive, and moving to my 3 motivation questions. Does that help? Okay. All righty. Let me make a statement or two about. Go ahead, Alex.
I'm sorry. Do you feel that it makes a difference if you say when you had sold, or if you had sold, or assuming you had sold your house, where were you headed? So that's got to be part of the phrase.
Yes. So the script specifically is, I'm curious, had you sold your home?
Had you sold? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one I use.
Yep.
Hey, and while we're at it, so thank you for asking that. While we're at it, let me just make a quick statement about the phrase, I'm curious.
Right.
Because you may notice that I say it a lot.
Oh.
And I say it a lot because I find that it is a softening tool, right? It softens whatever comes after it. So it doesn't sound like the Spanish Inquisition, right? I'm not just drilling question after question. I'm kind of wrapping it in some lighter language. And curiosity is one of those magic words. I think that's one of the magic words in the book. Am I right about that, Bogdan? Yeah, right. So staying in curiosity, because what's the opposite of curiosity? Judgment, right? The opposite of curiosity is judgment. So when you have to pick one, I do everything I can do to stay out of judgment. It doesn't always work. And I do everything I can do to stay out of judgment. And that leaves you with curiosity. And so somebody once told me, always be asking questions from a base of curiosity. And I thought, well, you know what, if I'm supposed to behave from a base of curiosity, what if I just put those words in the script? What if we just said those words? Hey, I'm curious. Right? The other thing that you may hear me say a lot is, would it surprise you to know? Right? That's a prefix script that I use. I stick in front of a lot of things. I'm curious. Would it surprise you to know? I understand. Validation words like absolutely. Got it. Make sense? All right, a couple of quick other things on expireds, and then I promise we'll move on. Some of you are like, praise the Lord. Let's get off of these expireds. One of the things I want you to remember about expireds is that you are not limited to things that expire the previous evening. And what I mean by that is there's a decade's worth of properties sitting in the MLS that expired that no one ever bothered to check in with, that I think are absolutely opportunities for you to have a conversation. And the slight difference in the script, because it's not current, might be, hey, Donna, this is Rick Scott with Keller Williams Realty. I'm giving you a shout today because I saw that your home was on the market back in 2014 and failed to sell. I'm curious, have you been following what's been going on in the market the last 6 to 12 months? Hey, back then, had you sold your home, what was your plan? Where were you headed? And now we're right back to, it's all about Donna. She's talking to me about, it doesn't matter that it was 7 years ago. I still want to know what the plan was. And maybe Donna says, you know what, I was moving down to Texas for the potential of grandchildren, right? For my unicorn babies that might someday come. And then I get to ask the question, wow, so that was 7 years ago. I'm curious. How are those grandchildren coming, right? And so maybe they've arrived, maybe they haven't. Hey, you know what? That sounds like an awesome plan. I'm curious, any thoughts about moving to Texas since you didn't sell the house the last time? And we just get to have a dialogue around things that are important and personal to Donna. Maybe it goes nowhere. Maybe it does. Maybe it goes somewhere. And as we have this dialogue, I get to say to her at some point, hey, you know, one of the services that I provide for folks who didn't sell the first time around, regardless of how long ago it was kind of a refresh on the value of their home in today's market. Would it surprise you to know that in the city of Danbury, home prices have risen by 12% since this time last year? Or whatever the number is. Would it make sense for us to spend just 30 minutes on the telephone kind of working through what the value of your home in today's market would be, just in case you have to pick up and head down to Austin anytime soon? I have a little time later between 4:30 and 5 or between 5:30 and 6. We could do a quick Zoom call. Would that be helpful to you? You see how it works? So you're doing kind of the same thing. You're just making some adjustments. And now you have an unlimited supply of people that you can be on the phone with attempting to find business. Success in real estate happens when you proactively go out and search for people to do business with, right? Success does not come from sitting, waiting for the phone to ring, or waiting, staring at the sky, hoping that a buyer or a seller might fall out of the clouds, right? It just doesn't work that way. Right, and so if there's a generational issue with Zoom, I'm going to tell you, I have not found that to be the case all that often. I have found that especially if there were a generational issue with Zoom, the last 9 or 10 months, 95% of the time has solved that, right? If my grandmother can get on Zoom to have Thanksgiving with us, she'll be 92 in a few weeks. Almost anyone can do it. And yet, if you run into that issue, you could certainly offer to pop by their house. Would it be easier if I popped by the house? The good news is that we have safety protocols in place that allow that to happen safely if you're comfortable with it. And then you could maybe describe some of those protocols. Donna, if it makes sense, I could stop by your house, masked and with gloves if you so choose, and we can certainly sit at opposite ends of the dining room table and be socially distant for our conversation. Is that comfortable for you? Again, just ask the question. You don't have to push yourself, but just ask the question. And somewhere in there, someone will say yes. Make sense? All right, so that's the point I wanted to make about expireds, is that you have the daily stuff, but you also have a catalog, a back catalog of tons of folks that you can connect with who didn't sell the first time around, right? If they didn't sell between 2009 and 2012, right, you can certainly have a conversation, because that was during the last downturn. Wow, Donna, it looks like you were on the market during one of the hardest times to be a seller in the last 2 or 3 decades. The good news is the market has completely turned around since then. I'm curious if it would make sense for us to discuss your options, discuss the possibilities, discuss the value of your home in the current market. Yes, no, maybe so. All right, guys. All right, so let's have a conversation around open houses. Yes? Woohoo! Look at the excitement. Like, thank you, Lord, it's not expired. So let's work through your opportunity with open houses, if we could. We've got 26 minutes, and that may well bring us right to the end. Mara, did you have something for us? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm doing my first open house with Fiona on Saturday, so this is good timing.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yes, and again, if you've never done an open house, I do encourage you to host your first one shadowing somebody.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love
I'm
that.
also available if anyone needs, like, can I shadow or anything? I would love to. I have a lot of time on my hands, so please feel free to let me know. I'm all ears.
Yeah. So, and Donald, just as a kind of PSA for everybody on this call, if you're searching for opportunities to either shadow somebody at an open house or host an open house, if you've done some on your own, let's dive right into how you can kind of do that. Right? Call the front desks of your market center and see if they have an updated list of who's doing what this weekend. Right? You start there. The other thing I would do is look in the MLS and just call some of the listing agents in your market center and ask who might be doing an open house on one of their properties this weekend. It might be them, or it might be somebody else who they have hosting, and they can give you that name, and you can call that person and say, hey, Rick told me to shadow somebody, and I was wondering if it could be you this weekend, right? There's almost nobody who will say no to those requests, right? I say almost nobody because I don't like absolutes, and yet, right, it's almost nobody who will say no to having you join them for an open house. So if in fact you are looking for open houses as a path to lead generation and then lead conversion, there are a couple things you need to understand about open houses. First and foremost, who do you find at open houses? Not a trick question.
Buyers.
And sellers.
So you find buyers and you find sellers. And the best part about open houses is that sometimes you find buyers who are also sellers, right? You find people who are out shopping for a house who also have a house to put on the market. So you get that two-for opportunity. I will tell you that back when I was still active in the field, most of the clients that I obtained from open houses were buyers. In the last number of years, seller activity has really risen at open houses. There's far more opportunity to convert at open houses than there has been. A couple of things I want you to recognize. Remember, I have said to you a number of times that you are always modeling behavior, right? You are always modeling behavior, your own behavior. That is true for you at an open house. Well, what do I mean by that? Oftentimes, people will descend upon your open house and they don't let you know that they're actually shopping for an agent. They don't let you know that they live up the street per se, and they're looking to put their house on the market. So they want to see how you may be handling their neighbor's home. But I want you from this day forward to always understand that you hosting an open house is not you sitting around waiting for someone to come and say, I want to buy a house. It's an audition. Your opportunity at the open house is to audition for the role of being that person's buyer's agent or being that person's seller's agent, right? So let's get specific. First and foremost, where are you finding houses to actually host open houses with?
Then Keller Williams.
Yeah, so if you don't, so start with your own inventory, right? So look around, see what listings you have, host open houses in your own inventory. However, some of you get stuck inside of your own inventory. What do I mean by that? I mean, you have a couple of listings, you have 4 or 5 listings, you have 6 or 8 listings, and you only ever cycle yourself through your own inventory because you think that your sellers only want to see you. Let's talk about that real quick. Remember we talked on day 1 about volume and scaling the business, about operating your business on models that are scalable so that you can grow easily and quickly. One of the biggest mistakes real estate agents make is building a business that revolves around themselves, instead of building a business that revolves around a set of standards that are important to you. When you build a business that revolves around you and you alone, it's very difficult for you to step out of any of the roles that you have put yourself in. When you build a business based on standards that are important to you, it's quite simple to find someone else who meets or exceeds those standards and have them do something that you typically would do. Now, I can tell you that I have had people say to me in the past, well, one of my value propositions is that I tell my sellers that I will personally host their open house. Well, here's my advice to you. Stop saying that. Right? It's an unnecessary part of a value proposition. Don't promise yourself. Promise a standard. Right? And then you're free to go and host open houses at other properties, which might be better for lead generation purposes, and you're not stuck in your own inventory. That doesn't mean I'm suggesting you don't host open houses in your own inventory. All I'm saying is that sometimes listing agents get stuck in their own inventory and it limits their growth opportunities. So start with your own inventory. If you don't have your own inventory, yes, you can utilize any inventory in our market centers. So go into the MLS and figure out where you think you might want to host an open house. What criteria might you use to figure out where you might want to host an open house?
Location, price point, type of house.
Yeah, so location, price point, type of house. I would also offer, go ahead, Alex, what else?
Oh, I was right there, same.
Oh, got it. I would also offer, do some market stats, right? If the market is really slow in a certain segment of a certain town, I don't know that I'd be volunteering to do an open house there anytime soon, right? Like the $1 million+ market in Reading, which is almost never moving quickly, right? Versus say the 550 range in Norwalk, right? Or the 650 to 750 range in Ridgefield, or the $400,000 houses in Danbury or Bethel, right? You need to know where the market is moving and then plant yourself right there, because that's where the traffic is going to be. So recognize that you are in control of the traffic that you drive to a specific house based first and foremost on the home that you choose to host. So based on those criteria, you can then run a list of our listings in the MLS. And again, if you don't have your own inventory, make some phone calls to listing agents. Just like I'm going to give Nicole a call and say, hey, Nicole, I'd love to host an open house on your listing in Wilton, either this Sunday or next weekend. Is that something that you and your sellers would be amenable to? Right. And so that now, Nicole, you and Nicole are going to work out when it makes the best sense for you to host that open house. Most listing agents are more than happy to have the assistance of other hosts, because especially if you have more than one listing, bam, now all of a sudden you have multiple opportunities to host open houses on your listings that you don't have to actually be in, right? Does that make sense to everybody, to choose open houses that actually will naturally drive traffic? Here's the other thing I want you to remember. I one time had somebody say to me, Rick, can I talk to you about my buyer clientele? And I said, certainly. And I said, how can I help? And they said, well, I'm so frustrated because I have all of these buyers in Woodbury. And I'm just not sure I want buyers in Woodbury. And I said, okay, well, I'm curious, where are these buyers in Woodbury coming from? And they said, well, I keep hosting an open house on a property in Woodbury. I said, okay, well, so maybe let's stop hosting the open house in Woodbury, because when you host an open house in Woodbury, buyers from Woodbury come to that open house, right? Where is it you'd like to have buyers? Well, I'd like to have buyers in Danbury and Bethel. Okay, well, what if we found you inventory in Danbury and Bethel to host open houses at, so that the people who are interested in living in those towns are the people that you're meeting, right? My point is, be careful about the choices you make, because those choices will ultimately make you, right? So the opportunity for you on the open house front is enormous. I want to spend just a little time talking about utilizing open houses as a lead generation tool and not just a listing services tool, right? Because there are two ways to look at open houses. Listing agents tend to view open houses as a listing services tool. Like, one of my services to a seller is to host open houses there. I want you to look at open houses as an opportunity to generate and grow your business, which is why I want you to be strategic about how you find open houses to host. I will tell you that one of the things that I used to do is I had an open house calendar. Yes, it was a paper calendar. And what that means is, by the third week of the previous month, I was planning my next month's worth of open houses by searching strategically for the properties that I wanted to insert myself into, and then calendaring those in my calendar, and then going and calling listing agents if they weren't my properties to see if I could get myself in there at some point. Right? It was a plan. It was on purpose. A lot of times I see people make decisions about open houses on Friday afternoon for a Saturday afternoon open house and hope that people show up, right? There's a reason why that sometimes is a struggle, because you haven't given it enough time. You haven't planned in advance to make sure you're driving traffic. Yes, Margaret.
So I do a lot of open houses and I've had a lot of success hosting for other agents, but a big feedback I've heard a lot, because now I'm at the point where people call me, is I always provide feedback within 24 hours. So I would encourage that you're making sure you build that relationship with the agent, pros, cons, whatever it is, so they're getting feedback they can share with their seller.
So you mean that when you're hosting an open house in somebody else's listing, you're giving the listing agent feedback from the experience?
Yes, yes, correct.
Got it. Right, and so that's one way to, if you don't have your own listing inventory, to make a name for yourself, so that listing agents are now wanting you to come and host their open houses. Yeah, really good point. Really good point. Here's where I was driving with that calendar. Research has been done that if you are interested in making open houses one of the pillars of your lead generation business, your lead generation strategy, if you really want open houses to pay you at a high level, you're looking at minimally 8 or so a month. 8 or so a month. Now, when you do the math on that, yes, I understand that's 100 open houses in a year. But do you see how the volume starts to show up as a positive for you versus, right? When I'm having coaching conversations and I'm talking to people who have open houses as one of their pillars, right? If you're just doing open houses to see what comes from it, this is not the conversation that we're having. We're having a conversation around, I've chosen open houses as one of the main ways that I am going to feed my business. And in that scenario, in a coaching conversation, I will sometimes ask, okay, so we're 3 months into the year with your open house strategy, how many open houses have you done? And the answer is, I've done 6. Okay, well, so if you've done 6 open houses in the first 3 months of the year, where the strategy says that really calls for like 24 open houses, is it a mystery why you're not getting the results you're getting, right? Ashley.
So I have a question. Given with everything with the market with COVID and also how quick inventory is moving, is our open houses, and I've done open houses over the last year, in midst of COVID, they have been different. And sometimes listings are moving so fast that they're gone if they're priced right before the open house on Saturday. So what is it still a good pillar in this market?
Yeah, so great question. So I will reserve comment as to whether or not it's a good pillar. I'll answer that question this way. I still believe that it can be a pillar of your business if you choose it to be, and then create a strategy to handle some of what you just put on the table, right? So I don't believe that because of our current environment that open houses should be off the table. Instead, I believe we have to lean into those open houses, knowing that we may get fewer results from open houses, although I'm pretty certain that if we polled our entire organization, what we would find is that results from like early April through mid-June, or maybe end of June, were a little wonky. As soon as the shutdown kind of came back and the market started to take off, I think that the polling would say we found that open houses were as robust as ever in terms of attendance, right? Which is why so many people started to lean into them. Again, safety protocols always, and having a strategy around how you're going to safely have people through the house. I still think that one couple at a time is the preferred method. Maybe today they're waiting in cars instead of waiting on the front lawn, right? Because it's cold, and yet having those safety protocols always will be step one. The second piece of what Ashley put on the table is 110% true, right? Inventory is moving quickly. It is my personal opinion, feel free to disagree with this, however, it is my personal opinion that You as the listing agent, in consultation with the seller, whether it's your seller or somebody else in the office, has every right to utilize that piece of inventory. So it comes on the market on Monday. There's multiple offers by Thursday, and there's an offer accepted by Friday morning. I believe that you and the sellers still have a right to make a decision to host a bunch of open houses that weekend. You're not necessarily trying to find a replacement for your buyer. And what I have encouraged a bunch of agents to do who have come to me with that exact conversation is just be upfront about it. Let the agent for the buyer know, P.S., we're still hosting the open house. The open house is not to try and find additional buyers to replace your buyer. The open house is going to be utilized, A, to drum up additional business, and B, perhaps seek out backups. But I still think you have a right to go ahead and host those open houses. And I think that the rest of our industry has to wrap their heads around the fact that business growth comes when we do that. And just like you're telling them ahead of time, you expect to be told when it's your buyer, so that we're all on the same page with that. Does that help any, Ashley?
No, it's a great answer, and I like the perspective on it, because I've seen a lot of that actually with the listings that I have had come on, or even open houses that I've covered for other people, where you're creating momentum by having people line up and following the COVID protocols, but it's also just goes back to the same thing, is like it's an opportunity to like be interviewed. And the way that you handle it in this market is how, whether it's going to be fly off the market in a couple of days or might already have an offer. It's setting the stage of how you're going to handle their listing.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think to Ashley's point, that is definitely today part of the expectation setting conversation with your own inventory. I would be setting that stage for it. Oh, by the way, if this sells quickly and at multiple offers, it may still be in your best interest, minimally for that first weekend and maybe even for a second weekend, to get additional exposure on the market, just so we have enough backups in case the offer you accept goes sideways. Lay it all out so that it doesn't seem self-serving when all of a sudden there's 9 offers, you've accepted 1, and you still want to have the open house, right? Set the expectations up front as to why it's a benefit for the client to do that, and then go ahead and do that. Yeah. The other side of that is make sure that you're having the conversation with the agent for the buyer, because the agent for the buyer, if given the opportunity, oftentimes will go right to drama if you don't have set that expectation up front. If all of a sudden it comes back this has happened a zillion times in the last couple of months. I think I've had this conversation more than almost any, where the listing agent decided to continue with the open house, didn't prep the buyer's agent. The buyers show up just to do a drive-by with their family, and there's 900 people going through the house that they just had an accepted offer on, and everybody freaks out. So just set the expectation up front and make sure you're not asking permission, by the way, right? If Ashley's the buyer's agent, the conversation goes something like this. Hey, Ashley, just wanted to let you know that the sellers have decided to push forward with the open house that had been scheduled on Sunday. Please note, they are looking to respect the yes that they gave your buyers. Because as a listing agent, I also think that's part of the expectation setting conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, when you say yes, you have to mean yes.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, because I think in this market too, like with things moving so fast, you have instances that I had this happen with a listing where I got multiple offers within 24 hours, and the client was like, I don't want to accept the offer. I want to have them keep coming in, and wanted me to we went on a Monday and wanted me to show all the way through the weekend, and was going to get back to those multiple offers the following week. And I had to prepare them and say, they might not still be on the table by next week. So you're running the risk of going, 11 days or 12 days before giving a response if they'll still be there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And strategically, you may be able to get away with 3 or 4 days. you
Yeah.
certainly don't get away with a week or 10 days, right?
Not in the, and we ended up getting away with it, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
And it was risky. It was, but I think also going back to your point on having that part of your listing presentation of preparing them on to be ready for the different scenarios, especially when it comes to like possibly getting multiple offers right away and how to handle open houses as part of the strategy.
Yeah, and we're going to spend a bunch of time tomorrow on expectation setting with your sellers, right? It's a big part of the listing consultation that we'll walk through with you. So stay tuned for some more conversation around that. But that's 100% right. Bogdan, go ahead.
So I was told, and correct me if I'm wrong, by my attorney that I use, that you can market the property until it goes to contract. So if you have a binder or an offer, you can do that, and especially do an open house. But if you're, in a contract situation, the 4-page contract, that's a contract pretty much, and you're not allowed to market the property anymore.
Yeah, so that's an interesting perspective that with respect, I disagree with, because there is, to my knowledge, there is nothing in a standard contract that would prevent the seller or the listing agency from continuing to market that house until the day that those sellers don't own the house, right? And so again, I think it's more about setting proper expectations. Once there's a firm contract, it's really difficult for sellers to entertain additional offers. Notice I say really difficult, not impossible, to entertain offers prior to a binding contract. But from a marketing perspective, unless there's something specifically written into the contract that says once we have a contract together where you agree not to market the property, I would push back on that a little bit. I would be curious if the next, ask him why he feels that way.
I will.
Do I know this person?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I would just ask him why he says that. It may just be that he's giving advice to kind of keep everybody calm, right? Because part of an attorney's job is to keep everybody calm.
She told me that I had some properties that I listed. I had offers on them, offer to purchase, not contracts. So she's like, that you can still market on Facebook or whatever the property until it goes to contract.
Yeah, and so I would agree with the first part of that statement and slightly disagree with the last part. You can market the property until the seller decides that they don't want to market the property any longer.
Well, Rick, so when you market show and so say you sign an accepted offer and it's not a contract yet, you're signed like a memorandum and you're going to do the contract in 20 days, you market MLS once everybody is signed show, but that means you can still show it. And then even past that point, like I had an instance where financing fell through on one property with 2 buyers. And then third one came around because we ended up showing it and we had ended up withdrawing the listing, but we showed it and we got an accepted offer and now we're under deposit.
Yeah, agreed. And so it's 2 different conversations that we're having here, right? So there's the contract prohibits marketing at some point versus the MLS says these are the steps, right? So they're 2 separate conversations. You may have some restrictions based on how it's reported in the MLS, based on what can be done, and yet real estate contracts in and of themselves do not, unless specifically altered to adjust for this, prohibit marketing at any given time. Elena, and then we're going to be out because it is 6.
I think unless you have an offer accepted that is contingent upon the canceling of open house, I think you can still show it, because even if you put the property as show, it implies that you're showing. But that's not my question. My question is, do you have anything in your market centers? Like in my previous brokerage, we had broadcast email. It was a roster, so you could quickly say, oh, anybody wants to do an open house, this is address, you pick the time, and then agents would reply, because it sounds complicated. You need to call the front desk, give your property, and then get the calls back. and we would utilize it for a different reason. Like somebody could shout out like anybody can recommend me some structural engineers that you worked with, or anybody wants to do the showing for me, I'm paying $30 an hour or something. Do you have anything?
Absolutely. Of course we have that. Yeah. So what I would encourage is the blast email lives inside of MyKW, right? What I would encourage you to do is you may not be here long enough to have gone through a new agent orientation, right? Because our new agent orientations have been spaced a little bit more sporadically since they're not doing them in person. So you will. I can encourage you to connect with Maria tomorrow, and if you're in the Stanford Market Center, connect with Adonis tomorrow. If you don't know how to do that, they can walk you through that. And if you've missed your new agent orientation or it hasn't happened yet, plug into that, because that's where you'll learn all of those ins and outs of where that exists in our technology. But it does exist in MyKW. You can blast your entire market center with all of those things that Elena just mentioned. Absolutely. Okay. All right, guys. So it's 6:02. Thank you for the extra few minutes. I hope this was a helpful path. We will finish open houses and then go through agent to agent referrals. And then I think we have geographic farming left in terms of source of business tomorrow. So 4 o'clock tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll finish source of business, move into sellers, and have a quick, we'll have probably 2 quick breakouts, one for you to practice a couple of scripts, and then one for you to talk with each other about building a lead generation strategy. And then we will cruise on forward. Always a pleasure. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. 9 o'clock tomorrow. We have a luxury guest coming on. So I encourage you to be on the Zoom call at 9 o'clock tomorrow.